caught in the crossfire. It's caught in the...
What's up, guys? Lance the Obscure Movie Guy coming to you once again with another fun-filled, fact-filled video that you probably won't care about, but we're going to do it anyways, trying to change the world one post at a time. Today we're going to be going over a psychological horror thriller from across the pond. And today we're going to be talking about Beyond Mamushi.
It seems like there's something or someone you don't like coming home to. He is the cause of all your problems, I take it.
No, you just have to wait until tomorrow.
If you're not straight with me, I can't help you. I just want you to be happy.
So near to getting my promotion, Dad.
That's nice, Chris. So, Kate, how you keeping? You know, with all your problems and that?
I want you to do something. The only way to get rid of rotting bacteria in life is to remove it permanently.
No! No! You're trying to put me in fucking prison!
You're already in prison.
Beyond Mamushi was written and directed by M.W. Daniels, stars Karina Jane as Kate and Gary Cross as Chris. Tells the story of Kate, who is dealing with some sort of breakdown and psychological trauma and having to deal with Chris, she's essentially in an abusive relationship. Not physically abusive, but emotionally and mentally abusive relationship, which we all know can have its own specific tolls to take on somebody. So coupled with the trauma that she's dealing with and the mental trauma that she's getting from her significant other, she begins to break at the seams. Now, from a fundamental standpoint, the movie checks all the boxes. I mean, there's literally, from a fundamental standpoint, there's no issues with this movie. Cinematography, videography is all very good. The audio is fine. Editing spot on. No audio issues. So fundamentally, top-class production. You're not going to notice anything that's out of the norm with any of that stuff. Now, the movie's got a really interesting opening sequence that basically starts off as a flashback of happier times when Kate and Chris first move into this house. And they're first moving in. They have a very loving relationship. They're very happy with each other. And she finds a business card for Mamushi, basically a psychologist, if you will. She doesn't throw it away. She basically hangs on to that card for potential future use. And the other cool thing was with the flashback at that opening sequence is that it's kind of, the flashback itself is played to like the sound of like an old like reel, like an old video tape. But there's a seamless transition from the flashback to modern time. And that sound effect goes away. There's a cool visual effect, and it's just a seamless transition that I thought they pulled off really, really well. Now, once you get past that flashback scene and kind of get into the modern day, you kind of see, a more fractured relationship between Kate and Chris. And unfortunately, you don't really know what Kate is struggling with or why. Whatever she is dealing with, her attitude has taken its toll on Chris, and now Chris has kind of got this disdain towards her. She's not as attentive as she used to be. Obviously, she's got her issues. There's stuff that needs to be done around the house. So he's kind of struggling with that, and his attitude towards her. I think the character of Chris, honestly, was probably the most complex character to pull off because I'm watching this film and like I'm kind of I've been that guy. I've kind of been an asshole to my wife. I think we all have. Um, and he pulls that off really well. And it's also in a way that like you don't know if he's trying to help her, like tough love, or if he's really just being a dick because it can come off as both ways. Now there are some instances where you're like, he's clearly being a dick just to be a dick. But it's it's his character. It's like one big backhanded compliment. It's like it's nice, but it's also shitty at the same time. So a very complex character that I think Gary pulled off really well. Um, I think his acting was pretty spot on from a male perspective. Um, and then Karina is Kate. I mean, obviously she's dealing with these. Again, you don't necessarily know what she's dealing with at the forefront, but she's also having to deal with Chris doing these things to her, and again, it's not physical abuse, but it's emotional and mental abuse, and she kind of feels like she's constantly walking on eggshells. Nothing that she can do is either going to please him or it's going to be right. He's going to find a problem with. So very good on-screen chemistry between these two, and they basically, it's really just them for most of the movie. So, everything they do is together. And they did this again. The screen chemistry was spot on. No issues with that at all. Now, unfortunately, through this process, Kate seems to, like I said, she's breaking at the seams. She doesn't know what to do. She finds the old business card from a couple of years ago when they first moved into the house with the psychologist and calls Emma Mamushi to have a session with. And Mamushi, she comes over, they have this session, and you kind of get the same sense with Mamushi as you do with Chris. Um, you can't really tell if she's trying to help Kate or not. It's very much like a tough love type thing. And Mamushi makes the suggestion of, well, why don't you just kill him? Why not? Just that way you don't have to deal with it anymore. I myself was in an abusive relationship with my husband and we had our own issues. So she's kind of sympathetic, but at the same time, it's like, why don't you just kill him? So it's like, you don't really know if she's trying to help or not. It's so again, more mental and emotional torture for poor Kate. So, the more the film goes on, the more you see the torture that she has to endure. There's actually a really good dinner sequence between Chris and Kate, which was really nice until it wasn't. Um, I thought it was a really good scene. Chris is trying to make amends. He's like, "Look, I know I've been kind of a dick lately. Um, I thought I'd make us dinner. My birthday's coming up. Let's try and get things back on track a little bit. Let's take a trip. I've got this trip set aside for us for my birthday. My dad wants to make us breakfast in the morning, and then we'll head out. And it's all nice until it isn't. Something as simple as basically what happens is she goes to clean the dishes, drops a dish in the sink, it breaks, and then he snaps. Um, you know, like a maniac. And it really makes you question, like, who's really more damaged in this relationship? Is Chris the more damaged one, or is Kate? Um, so, I mean, again, he's probably dealing with his own crap, having to deal with Kate. Um, but I know what it's like to be on edge like that, and it's just like you're always on edge and you don't exactly know what's going to send you over that edge. In this case, it was the breaking of the plate, and it just became a mess. So, like I said, the dinner scene was nice until it wasn't. So, as the film goes on, they do go to Chris's dad's house for breakfast, and that scene's pretty nice. And I don't want to give too much more away in the plot because after that breakfast scene, the movie does take a bit of a darker turn that I didn't really see coming. Um, so there becomes a darker tone with the film. Um, that second half of the film, there is some death involved. There's a reveal at the end, and you're like, oh crap, well, didn't see any of that coming. So I don't want to give too much away in the way of the plot after that. I mean, I will say for the most part, it's like I said, it's really well done. It's really well acted. I didn't have a whole lot of issues with this film. The runtime is roughly 50 minutes. Um, Now, I will say this is one of the few times where I would say this film would benefit from actually being a little bit longer and exploring some of those unknowns. Um, I mean, just Kate in general. You have this flashback sequence in the beginning of the film. They're a very loving couple. Something happens to her, or maybe it was something she was always dealing with. It's never really explained what broke Kate to begin with. Um, and maybe it was Chris that broke her. Maybe he was always emotionally and mentally torturing her. We don't know. It's never really explained what the overall encompassing problem was that she's dealing with. And it very well may have just been Chris, but I think a little bit of exploration into that um, would have been nice. In regards to, I'm going to tread lightly here because I don't want to give too much away in the plot, but in regards to the second half of this film, roughly like that, like I said, that roughly around the 28-minute mark, things change. And I think leading up to that 28-minute mark, there could have been a couple of extra, maybe just a couple extra minutes, kind of exploring um, what leads up to a potential, this 28-minute mark is just what I'm going to call it. Um, a little bit of exploration into that, maybe a little bit more of a dive in, maybe a couple subtle hints of what was about to transpire sprinkled in would have been um, a nice little clue here and there. And I think you know, the character of Emma Mamushi, we only really get to see her like that one time as far as the first interaction with Kate and Mamushi. Now, Kate does talk to her on the phone later in the film as well, but I think maybe another scene, maybe just one more session, maybe just to try and kind of explore that, could have also helped maybe move. I don't want to say move the plot along, but it would have expanded on the plot itself. Um, Again, the movie, it holds water with its 50-minute runtime, but I think it would have benefited from being a little bit over an hour. You probably could have done like an hour and 10, hour and 15 minutes with a little bit more exploration into some of these things to make it a more complete story than what it is. But with that 50-minute runtime, things do come together. It is a complete solid film for the most part. I think the characters, Kate and Chris, the actors, Karina and Gary, I think they did an amazing job carrying this film. Um, and realistically, there's only like two or three other people in the film for only a couple minutes at a time. It's Chris's dad, there's Mamushi. But realistically, it's really just them carrying the film on their shoulders, and I think they did a great job. I think Gary Cross is Chris. That guy really impressed me with his performance. Um, and then Kate. I mean, was a hard character, obviously, and she shows a lot of emotion, and eventually does go from one end of the spectrum to the other as far as mental and emotional damage to losing her wits and then kind of going back to that emotional damage. So really interesting characters, really well written for the most part. I think they did a pretty solid job with this one. So be on the lookout for Beyond Mamushi if you like psychological thrillers. This is a good one to watch. So like, subscribe, and comment to my YouTube channel. Check me out on Facebook and Instagram. I'll see everybody in the next video.